Good morning and happy Mother's Day. We are still in Acts chapter 12. We have been looking at what happened with James and his death, and then Peter being arrested, and now is going to be rescued from that imprisonment. But on the night before, Herod was to bring Peter forth, the apostle who was chained between two soldiers, and experience Herod himself once had endured, according to Josephus, was sleeping peacefully. I don't know how well we may have handled that, being arrested and then being able to sleep peacefully. So obviously, Peter must have had a great deal of confidence in his Creator. Peter would sleep because his God does not. Psalms chapter 121, verses 3 and 4. We can sleep because God doesn't. Two guards were outside the cell door, so 4 altogether, and they did a rotation in that. And then a brilliant light, a bright light, appeared within the room, and an angel stood before Peter. And this heavenly messenger, it seems, lightly tapped on the apostle's side and woke him up, instructing him to get up quickly. And so suddenly, Peter's chains, it seems miraculously, fell off. Yet the guards were not aroused. They were not awakened by all of this. And Peter was told to put on his sandals, to tie his belt in preparation for traveling, and to put on his outer garment, which he obediently did. He followed all of those instructions just as he was told to do. The deliberation shows that God was orchestrating. He was in charge of this escape, and there was no particular hurry, really. And Peter then was to follow, that is, keep on following God's deliverer. And as the apostle left what we would call death row in those early morning hours, possibly between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., he was in a state of confusion, bewilderment, it seems himself somewhat, hardly knowing whether this was really happening or whether he was seeing a vision. And Luke's description of Peter's mental state may suggest that he had received this information directly from the apostle. And Peter telling him exactly what happened and how he felt, and then Luke recording that by inspiration. And Peter had been under very tight security, possibly what we would call solitary confinement. For he and the angel had to exit past a first and even a second guard, and then go through an iron gate at the city's entrance. And just like the chains, the bonds that was holding him to the soldiers miraculously fell off. They get to this gate, and the gate, it seems, miraculously opened by itself. And so the angel then, after that, disappears. And it's hardly necessary to suggest, as one commentator does, Finlay, that there was nothing supernatural about this escape, according to him, his opinion, is that the angel simply means messenger, and that perhaps some friend came in, drugged the guards, bribed an officer, and helped Peter to safety. But consider some facts about that kind of nonsense. Number one, the light. How do you explain that? Did the guy who bribed him and came in have a flashlight? Probably not. Then the hand chains falling off. And number three, the iron gate opening on its own. These details all exclude any kind of a rationalistic viewpoint of somebody bribing people and sneaking in and other things of that nature. No, this was God doing this, and it was miraculous. And when the apostle kind of came to himself then, after all of this, he realized he had not been dreaming, but that he had been delivered by the Lord by way of a holy messenger. And having carefully thought about this, he made his way in the moonlight, because that would be the case since it was Passover time. There would be a moon out. And so he, by moonlight, made his way to the house of Mary. There are 6 Marys that are mentioned in the New Testament. This one is the mother of John Mark, who will come into view more later on in the next chapter, chapter 13. But this is the only mention of Mary in the inspired record, though by putting the facts together, one can conclude that she was the aunt of Barnabas, Colossians chapter 4, verse 10, and that the house is referred to as hers may suggest that she was a widow, and a wealthy one at that, as can be seen by the size of her house. It was big enough to accommodate a large group of Christians. And number 2, it had an outer gate suggesting a courtyard, and she also had a slave girl. So putting all those things together, she apparently was wealthy, and perhaps a widow also. But here at Mary's house, a large group of saints had gathered in the late night and early morning hours to pray. And doubtless they were petitioning God on behalf of Peter, whose life hung in the balance. Again, they lost one, they didn't want to lose Peter. And Peter knocks at the gate, the door of the gate, and the slave girl named Rhoda responded. Rhoda means rose, and such was a common slave name, according to history. And a later tradition suggests that she was put to death, martyred, during the time of Trajan. But Rhoda could not see the apostle, but she recognized his voice in her excitement, which seems to suggest that she was of the faith, that she was perhaps a Christian. And she forgot to open the gate, running instead to inform the others that Peter was outside. And this is one of those touches of authenticity that no forger ever would have invented, that Peter knocks on the door and she leaves him there and runs to tell everybody else, hey, Peter's at the door, but doesn't open it to let him in. And those in the house frankly told her that basically she was crazy. We have to wonder then what that suggests about how much they believed in the power of the prayers that they were praying. They were praying that he would be released, that he would be okay, and then they find out that he is, and oh, you're crazy. Do we do that perhaps sometimes? Maybe. And sometimes we may slip in our faith, but that doesn't mean that, we don't keep on going on and recover from instances like that. But she kept on insisting that Peter was there. No, he is there. He is there. But Peter, it seems, continued knocking until the brothers opened the door of the gate, and when they saw it actually was the apostle, they were amazed. The Greek actually suggests that they were in a state of ecstasy in seeing him there. Evidently, there was a rather loud turmoil about them seeing him, because Peter then, with a hand signal, urged them to be quiet. And he then declared how that he had been delivered from prison by the Lord through the use of the angel. And declared is an interesting term. It means to lead through. To lead through. Suggesting a from the beginning to the end narration of exactly what happened. It started this way, and then it ends up here, and there he is. And he told them exactly how it went. Peter then instructed the saints to inform James, the Lord's half-brother, and the brethren of these events, and then he departed, it says, for another place. So despite the Roman Catholic claim that the apostle went to Rome at this time, the Bible is silent as to his immediate place of labor, and doesn't tell us that. So to say that it was Rome is just merely conjecture. And the fact that James is distinguished here also is interesting from the brethren. Doubtless shows the leadership that James had in Jerusalem. There is, however, no justification for the common claim that he was the leading elder, the head elder. There is no justification for a head elder, or the president or the head of the Jerusalem church or anything else, or any other kind of title or position that they try to give to James. Here, it just simply means that he was a person that was well known. And when day broke, there was a great deal of excitement among the soldiers as to what had happened to their prisoner. Excitement might not be the word. Consternation, fear, a number of other words may fit in there. But after Herod's search for the apostle proved to not bring up anything, to find anyone, he investigated the matter himself, and he interrogated the guards, and not receiving an answer that was satisfactory to him, he commanded that they be led away for execution. And so apparently all 16 of them. This was standard Roman procedure, as we learn in chapter 16 and verse 27, a little later, but for guards to be put to death if they lost a prisoner. And that appears to have happened here as well with Herod. It does raise this question, though. Why were the guards at Jesus' tomb not executed? Interesting, isn't it? The prisoner escaped. Why were the guards spared in chapter 5 when all the apostles disappeared from jail as well? And after this embarrassing episode, Herod went down from Judea, Jerusalem in particular, to Caesarea, which of course is the Roman headquarters in Palestine, and he remained there. And so, quite an interesting bit of information that we find here about Peter escaping. A lot of questions come up with this, and I don't know that we really have the answer. James, the apostle, John's brother, was not spared, but Peter is. And all of that is in the realm of God's providence. And not exactly for us to know, perhaps. We could discuss it, but really, there's no satisfactory answer really that could come up, other than perhaps that it was God's will, or it's just the way that things worked out, providence of God, whatever it may be. Verse 20, then, verse 20 through 23, now he was highly displeased with them of Tyre and Sidon, and they came with one accord to him, and having made Blastus, the king's chamberlain, their friend, they asked for peace, because their country was fed from the king's country. And upon the set day, Herod arrayed himself in royal apparel, and sat on the throne, and made an oration unto them. And the people shouted, saying, the voice of a God, and not of a man. And immediately an angel of the Lord smote him, because he gave not God the glory, and he was eaten of worms, and gave up the ghost. Another interesting story. This is concerning Herod's death. There were, some beforehand things that took place here to this incident of Herod's horrible death, and Luke records the difficulty that the ruler was having with some of his subjects. He was angry with the citizens of Tyre and Sidon, prominent Phoenician cities on the Mediterranean coast, which was north of Mount Carmel. And likely there was some kind of an alienation here that caused a scarcity of food in these cities, because they petitioned Herod for peace through a mutual friend, Blastus, the king's chamberlain, that is, an officer in charge of household duties. Because of this friction, the people would be anxious to court the king's favor. They wanted to get into his good standing. And he, due to his unpopular status among the people, would delight in any kind of praise that he could get from the people. So conditions were ripe for this incident that follows here and his death. But we will talk more about that and his death next time.